Hello and welcome to Grognard Solo Gaming. I am the Grognard and today we are continuing with Curse of Strahd, where I have played the adventure and turned it into a story. Last time the party learned that Seraphine and Irina had been taken to Castle Ravenloft and that Strahd intended to marry Irina. And he even invited Friedrich and the rest of the party to the wedding. However, despite the Count's promises of safe passage, after some discussion, the Cleric and the witch hunter decided not to go to the castle. Later, Seraphine found herself recovering from some kind of powerful mind control called the Mind Mist that Strahd had used on her. Shortly thereafter, intruders were causing trouble in Castle Ravenloft, just as Irina was having health problems and Strahd left her in Seraphine's care. After the wedding, Irina is not only the new Countess von Sarovich, but Seraphine discovers her friend has also been turned into a Dampier. Desperate to escape the vampire's castle, the sorceress uses her Aasimar wings for the first time and attempts to fly them both to the Svalish woods. But the wings only last a minute, and as they fade away, the two fall and crash to the ground. And that is where we are picking the story back up. Seraphine reluctantly regains consciousness. Her whole body hurts so badly she can barely breathe. She tries to heal herself, but it doesn't work. She remembers healing Irina in the castle, so then it would seem that wasn't too long ago, since her power has not recharged yet. Where is she? It's warm, and despite the pain, she can feel she's lying on something soft. She's probably in a bed. Is she back in the castle? Seraphine forces her eyes open, terrified that she'll find herself back in Strahd's home. But to her relief, she sees the softly lit interior of what she thinks is a wagon, though it has been furnished into a cozy living space, and she is indeed in one of two beds. The wagon is quite small, and it's obvious Irina is not in it. Getting up and looking for her is out of the question, and Seraphine realizes she couldn't even take a breath deep enough to cast a spell that requires her voice. Should she even call for help if she is able to? What if whoever owns the wagon is going to bring her back to Strahd? Before the sorceress can make her mind up, the door opens and a woman enters. She looks to be human and around Seraphine's age, wearing a green and brown dress and a belt full of small bags and pouches. She turns around and helps a person behind her get into the wagon. To Seraphine's relief, it is Irina. After Irina comes another woman, and the sorceress wonders if she is confused and seeing double. But she realizes the women are identical twins. One of them turns to her and says, "Don't try to get up. You're safe for now. And your friend will be all right, eventually." The two women help Irina get into the empty bed, and the sorceress can see that her friend is covered in writings. Her hands, her neck, and her whole face, every exposed part of her skin, has been written on with black ink. Seraphine struggles to sit up. "What have you done to her?" One of the women in green puts a gentle hand on the sorceress's shoulder. "Don't worry, the ritual was successful." The other one adds, "We gave her direction and purpose. We can explain later, but now that you are awake, please drink this potion." The woman who spoke first brings out a small bottle made of thick glass from one of her many bags and uncorks it. "It will heal you." Seraphine recognizes the red color and the smell of a healing potion, and with the woman's help, she drinks it. The relief is immediate, and the Aasimar takes a deep breath. "Thank you so much." The woman who didn't give her the potion says, "You're welcome. Rest now, and we'll talk later." The two women leave the wagon and close the door. Despite still being in a bit of pain and feeling completely exhausted, Seraphine gets out of bed. She feels a little dizzy standing up, but there is only a narrow aisle between the beds, so she doesn't have to move any further to examine Irina. The sorceress takes a deep breath, then she takes hold of her friend's wrist and feels her forehead with her other hand. The Barovian woman is ice cold to the touch, and a wave of panic washes over Seraphine as she thinks her friend is actually dead. But she reminds herself Irina is no longer human, and she doesn't really know anything about what is normal for her now. Upon further examination, it is clear she has a faint heartbeat and a weak pulse, but to Seraphine's surprise, her friend is not breathing. Lifting Irina's sleeve, the sorceress can see that the writings extend up her arm. Looking closer at the letters reveals them to be flowing, precise and beautiful, but to belong to an unknown alphabet. Seraphine holds Irina's hand for a moment and watches her face. Despite everything, she still looks beautiful and completely peaceful. Even though the sorceress has only known her for a few days, she feels very close to her friend. She hasn't really thought about it, but she realizes it is probably because Irina is her first real friend. The first one that treats her like they are equals. In Agremeni, she is an Asimai, seen as a holy child of Sathramelin, like a living saint, causing most people to adore or fear her, or both. But to Irina, she's just her friend and an angel person. Seraphine smiles. She's glad they made it away from Castle Ravenloft and away from Strahd, and that they are still together. She places Irina's ice-cold hand under the covers, even if she doubts it will do much to warm her. Then she goes back to her bed, and though she has 1,000 thoughts and fears all clamoring for space in her mind, she doesn't have the energy for any of them, and she's soon asleep. When Seraphine awakens again, the wagon is rocking and creaking, as it is clearly in motion. She looks over at Irina, who is now awake, and looking back at her from the other bed. The Barovian woman is no longer covered in the strange writings, and she has also been given new clothes in the form of a Vistani dress. Irina looks pale and weak, but smiles at her friend. "You saved me, thank you. I don't really feel like I did, but I got us out of the castle, at least. Don't blame yourself. I don't think we could have stood up to Strahd, even if my brother and the other soldiers of Sathramelin had been with us. You might be right, it's just... You always carry the weight of the world on your shoulders, because you are what you are, chosen by Sathramelin. But no one can do everything. Don't beat yourself up about it." Seraphine nods. "How are you feeling?" "Weak, strange. I have been told I am a Dhampir now, a kind of half-vampire. But the sisters said I have kept my soul and that I will not be harmed by sunlight or running water like full vampires and vampire spawns. So I think I will be all right. Don't worry about me." Seraphine remains quiet and looks away. She can't tell if Irina really means it, or if she's just trying to make her feel better. To the Asimai, becoming a Dhampir means being tainted by heresy, and if there is no cure, it means execution without a trial. And how would you live with such an affliction, waking up every day with an impurity like that? It really is an infection of evil, and what if Irina spread it to someone else? Wait, what if... Seraphine holds her breath and touches her thumb on her right hand. What if she had been infected, feeding Irina her blood? A knot starts to form in her stomach. Would she stop being an Asimai? Would she lose her connection to Sathramelin? The sorceress takes a deep breath. No, she had manifested the wings after, and she felt no different. And she would rather be a Dhampir than lose Irina. She looks back to her friend, who is looking very tired. It is a sign of true friendship when awkward silences don't feel awkward. Irina smiles at Seraphine and closes her eyes. "Sorry, I just got lost in thought. Never mind. You rest. I will be here when you wake up." Just as Seraphine ends her sentence, the wagon stops. She can hear footsteps on what is probably a gravel road outside, and then there is a knock on the door. The sorceress feels much better, but decides to try her magic instead of getting up. The flame-like sensation in her chest is still there, and when she calls upon it, she can summon her magical golden hand, just like before. She uses it to open the door at the far end of the wagon. The two identical women from earlier both enter the wagon, and the first one says, "You look stronger, that's very good. We are Hugin and Munin, the daughters of Madame Eva." The woman gives no indication who is who, and the other woman says, "We have performed rituals on your friend, linking her to her husband. With time, she'll be able to siphon more and more of his power. It will not do much, but it will weaken him." The first woman takes over, saying, "The two of you have a lot in common, despite your differences, and now, well, even more so." Seraphine looks closely at the two women's belts with their bags and pouches so she can tell them apart. Then she says, "I'm sorry, which one of you is Hugin and which one is Munin?" Both women smile at the sorceress, then the first one says, "You can call me Hugin if you like, but the truth is that we are Hugin and Munin, and we are not very interested in individuality." Munin continues, Our mother poses as a fortune teller, but she's really a great seer with extraordinary psychic abilities. Hugin adds, that is why we know much that would otherwise be hidden, but we have limited time. She walks up to Seraphine's end of the wagon and bangs the wall twice with her palm. Just a moment later, the wagon starts to rock and creak again. Munin looks at Seraphine. She will need rest and care for a few days, but we trust you to see to that. Unfortunately, neither one of you can stay with us. Hugin sighs. Our mother is not well, or she would have seen you herself, and we cannot risk drawing the attention of the Dreadlord. Therefore, we've taken you to the village of Barovia. You will meet up with your friends, and then, as quickly as possible, you will take Irina to the church of Saint Androl in Vallaki. That place is warded from evil by the presence of the bones of a saint. Munin nods. It is as safe as she can be from Strahd in this accursed realm. One last thing. When you gave her your blood, your desire to help was very strong, and you gave Irina a bit of your inner light. Seraphine frowns. What? How? I mean, is that possible? The sorceress concentrates on her inner flame-like sensation, but she detects no difference from how it has felt in the past, and a sense of relief passes through her. Hugin shrugs. Unfortunately, we don't know the details, but it's not unlikely she will be able to manipulate magic the way that you do, to some extent at least. The sorceress nods, but doesn't find any words, and she's completely confused by the situation. She had wanted very strongly for Irina to be able to achieve her dream of learning magic, but she had not thought of that when she gave her the drops of blood. Could she still have willed it somehow? Or had Irina willed it? Or both? Her friend had been unconscious, so it seemed far-fetched it was her doing, but Seraphine just doesn't know. But Sathramelin had not punished her for what she did, so it seemed it had to have been a good thing. She had really wanted for Irina to be able to learn magic, and now it seemed she might. I don't know what this means, but I'll figure it out somehow, I guess. Thank you for telling me. Munin says, one of our friends has found an abandoned old wagon in the village. It has seen better days, but it should at least get Irina to Vallaki, and we'll lend you a horse. Hugin looks at Seraphine. Rest a little more. We'll reach the village in half an hour or so. Then she and her sister leave, holding on to the doorframe for support as they exit the slowly moving wagon. At around noon, Janosch and Friedrich are sitting in the Blood on the Vine, eating rations and drinking wine from the tavern's cellar. The paladins have been given some rare time off that they are spending resting in the rooms on the second floor. When no one had returned by the time the sun was rising, Janosch suggested they move to the tavern, as he had found it had several guest rooms. Friedrich had liked the idea, and they had moved their things to the Blood on the Vine, leaving a note on the door of the burgomaster's house. Now, with the census finished, there wasn't much to do except wait. Having finished his rations, Friedrich reaches into his satchel and brings out the book where he has written down all the information they have collected on the villagers and hands it to Janosch. The witch hunter opens the book and flips through the pages. So, the ones marked with ellipses are the ones that have no soul? Friedrich nods and Janosch sighs. It looks to me like only 1 in 10 has a soul then. I don't know what it means, but I don't like it. What are those people? Where did they come from? How are they alive? The witch hunter hands the book back to the cleric, who takes it and says, Those are very good questions indeed, and we should try to find the answers. But if it's true for all of Barovia, then it seems there aren't enough actual people to make it worth the effort to try and save them, and we may as well let it all burn. I agree, but before we know more, I suggest we hold back. We're better off with the people on our side, as long as we have to stay here. Also, if the Morning Lord is an older version of Sathramelin. I really don't like that idea. If it had been an offshoot, a new sect, then it would be very clear-cut. It would be heresy. But if what that fortune teller told you is true, then this might be the unknown origins of our church. Janosch thinks for a moment before he says, You mean, if time moves slowly here, then their religion would not have changed as much? That would also explain why some people here speak Locaire. The Barovians came from our world just a long, long time ago. But wouldn't they still know? I'm not so sure. Haven't you noticed how people's minds are muddled sometimes? You're right, and I think that, whatever it is what Terembor was trying to tell. The door to the tavern is suddenly yanked open, and Ismark and Parpol walk inside. The burgomaster acknowledges Friedrich and Janosch with a nod, but says nothing and walks straight to the cellar, followed by Parpol. Both men look exhausted, and they have a haunted look in their eyes. When they return from the cellar, Ismark is carrying a bottle of wine, while Parpol has found something stronger. The fighter looks sheepishly at Friedrich, who gestures for him to sit down. The Barovian man takes a swig of wine straight from the bottle. I am sorry. He glances at the cleric and takes another drink. I was foolish to go to the castle. Friedrich nods. Yes, but we understand you. We all wanted to go, we all wanted to fight back, and we all wanted to destroy von Sarovich for what he has done. But even though anger can win you a fight, it will never win you a war. Tell us, what happened? Ismark shakes his head and drinks more wine. I don't really want to talk about it, but I will, because you need to know. We walked to Castle Ravenloft, and when we got there it was around noon. The drawbridge was down, the portcullis open, we drew our weapons, we started to cross the drawbridge, then... Parpol pats Ismark on the shoulder with one of his giant hands.
Then he appeared and...
The sheriff's breath already reeks of whatever cheap spirits it is that he's drinking.
I don't know what happened.
The burgomaster sighs heavily and says, It's true, in the middle of the day, there he was, unarmed, unarmored, coming out from the castle to receive us like guests. And I don't know what he did, if it was magic or some dark vampiric power. But he, or something, took control of us. Janosch nods. It is well known that vampires have the ability to charm people. That is probably the power he used on you. Ismark shrugs. Perhaps. After that point I was in a daze, and I have only fragments of memories of what happened. Parpol looks bothered.
It is the same for me.
He empties the bottle.
But I treated that devil as if he was my friend, and it fills me with shame.
The burgomaster looks at the sheriff and says, I did too, my friend. There was no resisting whatever power he used on us. And in the middle of the day as well. So apparently daytime was never any kind of protection from that evil creature. And we were completely lost, like puppets on strings. I even walked my sister down the aisle for the wedding, and I was happy for them, happy for that bastard. Friedrich furrows his brow. So, von Sarovich went through with the wedding? Do you know why? Did you have any idea that was his intention? It does not seem like something he would do on a whim. In fact, I doubt he does anything on a whim. The cleric looks at the burgomaster, who says, I had no idea. I thought he was just feeding on my sister because she is beautiful, and that he would perhaps turn her into a vampire spawn as some kind of power trip. So it's all quite strange. I even heard him referring to her as Countess von Sarovich. Giving her the title, and his last name certainly seems to indicate he is serious, or playing a game much more elaborate than a simple power trip. Do either of you know if he did turn Irina into a vampire spawn? Parpol shakes his head, and Ismark says, No, but what if he did? Is there a cure, or will you kill her? If she has been cursed with vampirism, then death is the cure. The Barovian fighter finishes his bottle of wine. I don't know if I can accept that. Friedrich is about to speak when the door to the tavern opens, and to the surprise of everyone inside, they see Seraphine standing in the doorway. She is soaked in rain and looks quite pale, but no one can see either blood or injuries on her person. Without entering the tavern, the sorceress motions for everyone to come outside, and she says, Quickly, gather your things, we must take Irina to Vallaki. Everyone in the tavern gets up. Friedrich says he will fetch the paladins and all their gear. Janosch goes up to Seraphine and asks if she's all right. A faint shrug is all he gets for an answer before Ismark rushes by, calling for Irina. Outside the tavern there is a rickety old wagon with a makeshift tent over it. The wagon is hitched to a large brown draft horse. The rain is pouring down, but Ismark goes straight to the back of the wagon. Once there, he sees his sister lying on a mattress, covered by a few blankets. She's even paler than Seraphine and seemingly asleep or unconscious. The sorceress asks the burgomaster to calm down and to let his sister rest, while assuring him she is all right, though in dire need of recovery. Ismark eventually calms down and thanks Seraphine for bringing his sister back to the village. Friedrich and the paladins join the others outside, and Gottlieb goes straight to the back of the wagon and looks at Irina. Seraphine is too distraught to catch what is going on, but for Janosch and Friedrich time slows down as they await the paladin's verdict. Sathramelin had gifted both paladins with the ability to unerringly detect undead, and if it turned out Irina was a vampire spawn, they were seconds away from driving a stake through her heart and cutting off her head, something that would most likely end their alliance with the burgomaster, and who knew how Seraphine would react. The cleric and the witch hunter look at one another and then at Gottlieb. The seconds crawl by. Then the paladin shakes his head, and the tension the witch hunter and the cleric were feeling is quickly replaced by the cold of the rain. Friedrich tells Ismark that he and Parpol should stay in the village and that they should focus on the restoration of the church and the construction of a palisade. The burgomaster is reluctant to let his sister go without him, but he goes along with the cleric's instructions. Once everyone's backpack has been stashed on the wagon, Seraphine promises Ismark that she will take good care of Irina, and then she takes her place on the wagon next to her unconscious friend. The cleric and the witch hunter shake hands with the burgomaster and the sheriff, wishing them good luck, before sitting in the front of the wagon. Janosch takes the reins and ushers the horse to start moving. The paladins lean their glaives on their shoulders and walk behind the wagon as it starts rolling west through the muddy streets of the village. The half-rotten old wagon moves slowly along the road, and after approximately half an hour, the party crosses the river south of the village of Barovia. A few minutes later, both Friedrich and Janosch spot a man hiding between the trees by the side of the road. Despite the darkness of the nearly black clouds, the heavy rain, and the cover of the trees and bushes, the man's pale face sticks out like a sore thumb. Unkempt and ragged, the feral-looking man just stares back at them with an angry face. The cleric says, "Be ready to draw your bow." Then he reaches over to the witch hunter's quiver, pulls out an arrow and utters the holy word for light. And just as the arrow begins to shine with a clear golden light in one fluid motion, Janosch drops the reins and draws his bow. Then he takes the arrow from Friedrich, and without hesitation he fires at the man, aiming for his shoulder. The glowing projectile flies straight for its target and hits as intended, but to the surprise of both men in the front of the wagon, when it hits, the arrow cracks and bounces off the man's skin, as if it was impenetrable. In the light of the arrow, they can see the man is wearing torn clothes, so some kind of hidden armor is out of the question. The man snarls and stares for a second, and Janosch instinctively reaches for another arrow, while Friedrich yells out, "Ambush!" as it looks as if the man is going to come charging at them. But, perhaps because the paladins come running, the feral man changes his mind, turns around and starts running southwest into the forest. Seraphine sticks her head out from under the makeshift tent, and everyone watches the forest for a minute or so. Then the cleric explains what happened, and the witch hunter suggests it might have been a were-creature in its human form, as that would explain the feral appearance, torn clothes, and immunity to an arrow that was not magical or silvered. Since there is no further sign of the man, and it seems he was alone, the paladins fall back into line behind the wagon, and Seraphine goes back to tending to Irina. Janosch takes the reins and the journey continues. The heavy rain keeps falling, and eventually the road becomes so muddy the wagon gets stuck, forcing Friedrich to get off and help the paladins push. When it happens for the second time, the cleric stays in the back and marches along with his guards, leaving the witch hunter alone in the front of the wagon. With the sun completely hidden behind the thick dark clouds, it is difficult to tell the time, but Janosch estimates they have been traveling for another hour when they come to a fork in the road. The witch hunter can see a signpost and an old wooden gallows. A body hangs from the gallows, and the signpost is hard to read, making Janosch stop the wagon to get closer. Though he has seen more hangings than he can remember, his eyes are still drawn to the hanging body. There is something eerily familiar about it. It is dressed in dark clothes and a dark cloak, wearing a wide-brimmed hat that seems about to fall off. Is that one of his brothers in arms, another witch hunter of Sathramelin? The closer he gets, the better he can see, and with each step it is becoming clearer that this is not just any witch hunter. That is his cloak, and his hat, and the body is exactly his size. What is going on? Janosch stops and stares at the body as the wind starts to spin it around. Slowly, ever so slowly, then... Lightning flashes across the sky, illuminating the face of the hanged man, revealing it to be Janosch's own, swollen and bluish grey, with a purple tongue visible in the open mouth, and with wide-open dead eyes that seem ready to pop out of their sockets at any time. The witch hunter raises his right hand to his throat and takes a step back. "What are you doing?" Janosch draws his sword and spins around, only to find Friedrich standing behind him. "Are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." The cleric looks around and shrugs. Janosch turns back to the hanged man and points, but it no longer looks like him. Now it's just a half-rotten corpse, dressed like a Barovian commoner. The witch hunter shakes his head. It's nothing. I'm just seeing things." The two men inspect the signpost and find that except for the village in the direction they have come from, it points to something called Tser Pool to the northwest, and Castle Ravenloft and Vallaki to the southwest. After taking the reins and getting the horse going in the direction of Vallaki, Janosch stares at the dangling corpse until it passes from view. But it remains the same, just the half-rotten remains of an unknown Barovian. Janosch knows that what he saw was neither imagination nor hysteria. But what then? An illusion? But cast by whom and why? It didn't really make any sense, but then again, many things in this godforsaken land did not. The muddy road twists and turns through the Svalish woods, which are almost as dark as at night because of the torrential rain. Janosch normally has no problems keeping track of time or direction, but by the time the forest opens up, he isn't sure if they are heading north, west, or somewhere in between, and it is difficult to tell if it has been 2 hours or 4 hours. It is as if Barovia itself is pressing down on his mind. The rain, with its seeping cold and incessant monotone drumming, is almost hypnotic, and the gnarled old trees all turn to potential monsters in the gloomy darkness. And much like when they first entered these lands, the forest is so thick it looks intraversable, making the witch hunter feel as if he has no choice but to go exactly where he is going, as if something unseen is pushing him and his allies along the dark path of its own machinations, far away from their own plans and their own destiny. Janosch shakes himself out of his dark thoughts and looks up ahead as the trees finally start becoming more sparse. The road starts to slope upwards, and it becomes apparent it is going to go up the mountain in front of them, and the witch hunter wonders if the wagon can make a journey like that under the current circumstances. Surveying the area, Janosch can see a high waterfall on the right-hand side of the road. The water crashes down into the river Ivlis below, and to the east the river broadens at the foot of the mountain, and he guesses that area has to be the Tser Pool that the signpost pointed to. Squinting and straining his eyes, the witch hunter sees a dot of light near the Tser Pool. Taking everything into consideration, the distance and the rain, it has to be a large campfire if that is indeed what it is. It would also have to be shielded from the rain somehow to be burning in this weather. Friedrich joins the witch hunter, and the two discuss what to do. The cleric agrees it does not seem wise to risk trying going up the mountain, as there is only room for one more person under the makeshift tent of the wagon, and there is no good place for setting up their own tent. They decide Janosch is going to go investigate the light by the pool. The witch hunter moves down a fairly steep slope leading down to the river. There is a clear path, but it would probably not allow wagons to pass this way, at least not in this kind of weather, and especially not the wagon they had been using. Between the rain and the dense Svalish woods, it is easy to remain unseen. Janosch moves quickly and keeps his eyes open for any guards posted outside the camp. It was possible this was a camp of lycanthropes, if it indeed had been a were-creature they had seen earlier. And if that were the case, he did not want to get caught. It also meant he needed to be mindful of the direction of the wind and his own smell, though with the heavy rain, it probably wouldn't be much of a problem. Getting closer, Janosch can hear shouting and singing. Once he gets close enough to see, it becomes clear these are not were-creatures, but Vistani. A quick head count adds them up to 12 adults, all carrying scimitars and keeping light crossbows close at hand. There are also a few spears leaning against the thick wooden poles that have been driven into the ground to create a canopy over the bonfire that everyone is gathered around. After further investigation from a safe distance, there are a total of 5 tents, 4 wagons and 8 horses that are tied up east of the camp. Janosch cannot find any guards or scouts, and all the Vistani around the fire are apparently drunk to the point where their speech is slurred and they have a hard time walking straight. It seems strange that they act so recklessly in Barovia, but perhaps being allied with the lord of the land could afford them this kind of confidence. Once Janosch has returned to the rest of the party, everyone gathers at the back of the wagon, so they can hear his report while Seraphine can stay under the makeshift tent. The witch hunter finishes his report by saying, "There might be more inside the wagons and the tents, but from their sizes I estimate there are no more than a maximum of 16 Vistani in total." As Janosch falls silent, everyone turns to Friedrich, who thinks for a moment and then says, "We have 2 light crossbows, 1 heavy, and you have your bow, Janosch. We move through the forest and ambush them from the southwest, right after I pray for silence. That way we buy time before anyone inside the wagons understands what's going on. Gottfried, you carry Irina."
Of course, father.
Friedrich looks at Seraphine, expecting her to disagree with his plan, but to his surprise, the sorceress remains silent with a grim expression on her face and a spark in her eye that just might be eagerness. He doesn't know what she endured in Castle Ravenloft, but it seems these Vistani are first in line to pay for it. The cleric has seen it many times in the war, atrocities begetting atrocities, irrevocable loss turned into an endless need for vengeance. It had been the motivation of many of his best soldiers, and if whatever had happened in the castle had stirred some proper bloodlust in the Asimai, then perhaps Friedrich needed to thank von Cyrich. Avoiding smiling to himself, the cleric tells Janosch to tie the horse to a tree. Then the witch hunter leads the party down the sloping path to the east. Nothing has changed in the Vistani camp when the party gets close enough to see their enemies. Gottfried places the now conscious Irina under a tree, and Seraphine calls on her magic to create an illusion to hide her under the image of one of the thick bushes that grow in Barovia. Friedrich moves over to the sorceress. "Don't use any magic that gives away our exact location." He hands her his light crossbow and his bolt case. "They are all armed, they all serve Strahd von Sarvich, and this is war. Shoot to kill." Seraphine simply nods and starts winding up the crossbow to load it. Then everyone creeps up to the edge of the forest southwest of the camp, and the cleric says, "Find cover, take aim, then as soon as I finish my prayer, fire at will." Friedrich calls on Sathermelin to silence the camp, aiming the effect at the campfire. And as soon as he finishes, his allies unleash a volley of deadly projectiles. 2 men and 1 woman fall to the ground, dead or mortally wounded. Only 1 man gets hit and remains standing, and in shock and horror he spins around, trying to look at the bolt in his back. But as he screams in pain, there is only silence, and the Vistani with their backs to the dead react to nothing but the fact that there seems to be something wrong with their ears. Friedrich looks at the man with the bolt in his back and smiles. This is going to be a bloodbath, a glorious, glorious bloodbath. He raises his hand and snaps his fingers, generating an unnatural deep tone, like that of a bell. And the man's eyes roll back as he falls, dead before he hits the ground. Janosch unleashes a second arrow and kills a second Vistani, landing the projectile in his throat. He has seen the silence prayer before in the field, but this is the first time Friedrich has used it, and it is very efficient in both adding to the chaos and in containing it, adding confusion and preventing communication. More bolts find their targets, leaving more Vistani wounded and in pain. 2 Vistani get down on the ground behind the fire, 2 flee in a panic, and only 3 manage to locate their attackers, draw their scimitars and move to attack. Though the shock of the sudden attack has sobered them, none of them are really in fighting condition. Despite that, one of those with enough wherewithal to attack engages Friedrich and lands a vicious cut across his right arm. The cleric winces in pain, but he has no problem keeping his prayer of silence going, nor lifting his mace and striking it against his shield, again generating the life-destroying bell-like sound. And hearing it, his attacker simply crumples to the ground. Meanwhile, the paladins have dropped their crossbows and taken up their glaives to receive their attackers. And it is a glorious bloodbath indeed. Both Vistani get run through, and after drunkenly swinging their scimitars to no effect, both men drop their weapons and grab their wounds in a futile attempt to stem the bleeding. And the victim of Gottlieb's weapon ends up with a handful of his own guts as they spill out from his torn lower abdomen. Friedrich calls for Seraphine and Janosch to stop the fleeing Vistani, and for the paladins to engage the two that had previously ducked down behind the bonfire, as they have now found both their weapons and their courage, and are coming charging as best they can on their unsteady feet. Seraphine runs out onto the path and moves northwest to be able to see the running Vistani woman. "Sathramelin will punish you, heretic!" The flame in the sorceress's chest stirs and her words hex the woman. Then she focuses her magic into 3 golden missiles that shoot through the rain, making the water sizzle on contact and seeking their target with an intelligence of their own. The woman is knocked to the ground by the first missile, and the 2 other missiles bend their trajectories to hit her on the ground, smashing into her face and torso with enough magical force to break bone. At the same time, Janosch runs northeast across the path and fires an arrow at the back of the other fleeing Vistani. The shot misses and the witch hunter steadies himself, aims and shoots again, this time landing the shot. The running man gets his right lung pierced and he falls to the ground spewing blood. Even if he has a potion of healing, he won't be able to drink it, so Janosch turns towards the camp as the man will be dead in a few seconds. The witch hunter is ready to fire another arrow, but as he scans the area he can see the paladins massacring the last 2 Vistani. Friedrich signals for Gottfried to bring Irina, then he gathers everyone by the wagons and motions for Janosch to enter the northernmost one. The first wagon is devoid of people, while the other 3 hold 1 Vistani each, 2 men and 1 woman. As they are all sleeping and all within Friedrich's prayer of silence, they never know what happens to them. The witch hunter simply slices their throats one by one. Friedrich puts his mace away. "Well done, collect everything useful and kill anyone not done dying yet." He turns to the sorceress. "Seraphine, use Gravedigger over there, please." He points west of the camp before turning to Gottfried. "Place Irina in the wagon that is not a bloody mess." Around a quarter of an hour later, Seraphine is standing over a mass grave of her own making, looking down at 15 dead Vistani. Somewhere in the deep and dark back of her mind, her empathy tries in vain to make its voice heard. It's trying to make her ask what she is doing and what she is becoming. But she shuts it down. This is how she gets her vengeance. This is how she regains control. All of these people served Strahd, did his bidding and spread his evil. They deserve as much of her hatred as the vampire himself. Control and power, that is what she needs, not empathy, not a million questions of self-doubt. And why not? Is this not the will of Almighty Sathramelin? Does her Heavenly Father not relish in the destruction of evil creatures? He does. He does so very much. In fact, her desire for vengeance lines perfectly with the will of her Father. She takes hold of the holy symbol hanging around her neck. Then she uses her divine powers to move the earth back, filling the grave. Friedrich walks up to Seraphine as she finishes flattening the ground. "You have done well. This is the other side of Sathramelin. This is what holy war really looks like. Now you are truly one of his soldiers, and your journey towards the light is complete. Your powers will soon start to grow. Just wait and see." The sorceress nods. "Thank you, Father. When you're ready, go see to Irina. We will deal with the rest." The cleric goes to look into one of the tents, and the sorceress starts walking towards the northernmost wagon. Seraphine doesn't really want to reflect on herself or the situation, but could Friedrich be right? Had her failure to seek the destruction of evil held her back for all those years in the abbey? It was certainly possible, maybe even likely. Even when she bound herself to Ainsof, Sathramelin's flaming sword, it had been out of fear, out of a need to protect herself, all because of that nightmarish house, Durst Manor, and the horrors within. That was why she had prayed for the power of Ainsof, and why she had picked up a shield and put on armor, fear and weakness, but no more. Power and dread were the means by which Strahd von Sarvich subjugated and ruled all in his domain, meaning she needed power and courage to destroy him, or perhaps terror of her own. For indeed, fighting fire with fire was not only viable but wise, when yours was the fire of Almighty Sathramelin. Once Janosch and the paladins are done counting the coins and the important items, and the witch hunter has written them down, he presents the list to Friedrich.
This is what we have found. 134 copper pieces, 191 silver pieces, 217 gold pieces, 3 platinum pieces, a few valuable items, a copper chalice, a carved bone statuette in the likeness of a tree, and a small gold bracelet, also a silver ring, an iron brooch, and these ugly elven boots.
Janosch holds up a pair of bizarre green boots, with a brown net over their feet and branches embroidered at the top of the boot shaft.
I suspect they are magical.
Friedrich nods. Why else would anyone wear something so ugly? You can throw them on the fire. We're not wearing anything made by elves. But leave the other items with me. I will investigate them for magic later. What about weapons and armor?
No extra armors, just the sweaty and bloody leather ones the Vistani were all buried in. But we found 18 scimitars, 5 daggers, 5 spears, 13 light crossbows, 12 bolt packs, and nearly 600 bolts. Of course, there are also the 4 wagons, 5 tents, and 8 horses, as well as a plethora of common items, like cooking utensils, rope, various bags, food, spices, wine, bedrolls, tinderboxes, and so on.
Very good. We take everything. These wagons are of good quality. They will be able to make the journey up the mountain.
The only problem is any other Vistani we encounter. We had perfect conditions to ambush these fools. They were drunk, blinded by the fire, and had no guards. Also, it seems their leaders were the ones sleeping in the wagons. I am not sure we would want to take a group like this head on.
You are right, and the perfect circumstances were indeed the reason for our attack, and other Vistani would recognize the wagons, no doubt. And we don't want that. We'll hide them when we are getting somewhat close to Vallaki. Friedrich calls for the paladins, and once they have walked over, he says, "Pack everything into the wagons, then we'll camp here. It's too late to continue tonight." As the sun sets somewhere behind the heavy rain clouds, the 4 men tear down the Vistani camp and pack it up. When they are done, only the canopy is left standing, as it will protect anyone on guard duty from the rain. In the end, they move the wagons into a more strategic positioning and take out everything soaked in the blood of the Vistani leaders, so they can sleep inside. Then Friedrich makes a guard schedule with 2 guards at a time, and the campfire is extinguished. As no one needs to be in the rain anymore, Seraphine uses her magic to make everyone dry and warm, and as the others thank her, their gratitude is obvious in their voices and faces. Gottlieb and Gottfried take the first watch, and while Friedrich retires to one of the wagons to examine the found items that stood out, Janosch picks another wagon to retire in. Having closed the door, the witch hunter takes a deep breath before taking out Morgantha's skull from his backpack. He places it on a small table between the 2 beds in the surprisingly cozy wagon. He didn't really think about it earlier while he was killing the residents, but the well-kept and decorated interior makes it feel like a tiny cottage, except for the blood stain on the floor, that is. Janosch turns his attention back to Morgantha's skull.
"It's night time. Speak, hag."
The faint visage of the dead witch's ghost appears in front of the witch hunter.
"So belligerent, clever one. But I suppose the roles are reversed, and I had better get used to being the servant. So what can I do for thee?"
"That is very much the question. We are far away from the graveyard in the village. Why should I not bury you here and be rid of you?"
Now, we both know you have seen through my bluff, and I won't try to harm you no more, and I will earn my existence if I must. And I think you will find there is much I can tell you and much that I can teach you."
"I doubt you know anything that is not heresy."
"How about a language? Lingua mortuorum."
"Black tongue, the legendary language of the dead. Don't play with me. It's just a myth. It's not real."
No, one language shared by all things that are dead. It's real, and I would be a fool if I tried to lie to you. You can verify it yourself, and it will be very easy, because the dead are always listening."
"Pretending that what you're saying is true. Necromancy is still heresy."
"Yes, so it's lucky you don't care about heresy. I'm bound to you. I know you, Janosch Herz. I know why you do what you do, why you are so eager to dish out death. You kill in the name of religion, in an attempt to wash the blood of the innocents from your hands, killing the heretics, trying to wash away blood with blood, hoping and praying that your god will know the difference."
"Shut up, you know nothing, witch."
"Oh, but I do. I even know why you want to know the language of the dead, with whom it is you so desperately seek to speak." Morgantha's appearance changes. "Nareo roken, nalje melme nier sanda, sinane quente ilien vera, elenaria lomelind."
"Don't you dare speak her name, hag. I've had enough of your so-called insights. I will find you when I'm dreaming, and you better deliver on your promise, or I will personally carry your skull into the Bargansola Cathedral. Now go away."
Morgantha's ghost dissipates and the witch hunter throws her skull into his backpack. Part of him wishes she was lying about the language of the dead, so he doesn't need her, so he can just take his anger out on her, sanctify her skull and be rid of her. But if what she's saying was true, then this was the opportunity of a lifetime, perhaps everything he could hope for. Contacting the dead, learning the secrets of life and death, it seemed like a fork in the road of destiny, and perhaps the escape he was looking for. But it was not a decision to be made lightly, because whether he thought so or not, the church would find it heresy, and heresy meant death. But then again, living itself meant death. It was, after all, inescapable for nearly all humans. And as a soldier of Sathramelin, how long could he expect his road to be? How many more lives could he take before he lost his own? Janosch sighs. Morgantha had been right. He didn't even have to talk himself into this. If the language of the dead was real, he would break his symbol of Sathramelin and burn the Liber Sanctus to learn it. It was a life-altering decision, but he had made it already. In fact, he had made it long ago. And soon, very soon, he would put all his occult knowledge to use and embrace the heresy. And that is where we are leaving the story this time. As you might have guessed from Irina getting her portrait with the rest of the party, she is making her way to becoming a player character. The way it is going to work is that this episode she was level 1, and she will gain 1 level each episode until she catches up with the party. But she is also weakened from her transformation into a Dhampir, and that is represented by temporarily lowering her hit point maximum and giving her levels of exhaustion while she is leveling to catch up. And how that would work I will put on the screen now if you want to look at the details. Finally, if you're one of the few people who follow this series and you actually made it this far, first of all, thank you very much. And second of all, please let me know in the comments if the recap of the previous episode at the beginning of this episode is something you think is a good thing, because if it is, then I will add that to all the future episodes. And that was it for this episode, and I thank you very much for watching or listening, and hopefully I will see you in the next video.